What happens when a narcissist finally meets their own reflection? For years, they've used manipulation to keep you off balance, rewriting history, twisting your words, making you question your own memory. But the game changes the moment you stop defending and start watching. By simply becoming a neutral observer, someone who no longer flinches, no longer reacts, no longer feeds the cycle, you create what psychologists call a psychological hall of mirrors. And in that hall of mirrors, a narcissist sees something they have spent their entire life running from: themselves. Today, we're going to look inside the architecture of the narcissistic false self, the fragile, invisible structure that holds it all together, and understand exactly what happens when that structure starts to crack. Because once you understand the design of the cage, you're no longer in it. To understand a narcissist, you have to first understand the concept psychologists call the false self. The term was coined by the British psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott in the mid-20th century. His idea was simple, but devastating. Some people, usually in early childhood, learn that their authentic self, the real, unpolished, emotionally needy self, is not safe to show the world. So they build a second self, a performed self, a curated image designed not to reveal who they are, but to control how others see them. For the narcissist, this false self becomes everything. It is the armor, the identity, and the survival strategy all in one. It requires constant maintenance, constant validation, constant proof that it is working. Here's the critical insight. The narcissist does not experience the false self as fake. To them, it is all they are. The real, vulnerable self underneath, the one that formed before the armor went up, feels so dangerous, so shameful, so small, that even the narcissists themselves cannot look at it directly. This is why external image is not vanity for a narcissist. It is oxygen. When their image is intact, when people admire them, defer to them, fear them, or simply orbit around them, they feel stable, real, cohesive. But the moment that image is challenged, the entire internal architecture begins to shake. So what does that shaking actually look like? What triggers it? And what happens inside their psychology when it does? Psychologists have a term for what happens when a narcissist's false self is threatened: narcissistic injury. It sounds clinical. It isn't. It's intense, disproportionate, and often explosive. A narcissistic injury can be triggered by something as small as not being greeted first when you walk into a room, a joke that lands at their expense, a moment where someone else receives praise they believe they deserved, or, perhaps most powerfully, the moment a person they have controlled simply stops reacting. When injured, the narcissist does not process the discomfort the way most people do. There's no quiet reflection, no sitting with the feeling. Instead, two primary defense mechanisms activate almost immediately. The first is narcissistic rage. This is the outward explosion, the cold withdrawal, the sudden cruel remark, the character attack that seems to come from nowhere. It is not anger at you. It is terror about themselves, projected outward as aggression. The second is devaluation. If you have threatened the image, you must be made worthless. Because if you're worthless, your challenge doesn't count. The wound disappears, or so the mechanism believes. Here's what's philosophically fascinating about this. The Stoics talked about the futility of seeking validation from outside the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man who needs the admiration of others has placed his security in something he cannot control. The narcissist has done exactly this and built an entire personality around it. They have outsourced their psychological stability to other people's reactions, which means anyone who stops providing those reactions holds a kind of invisible power the narcissist cannot understand and cannot counter. That person is you. Or it can be, in psychological terms, a narcissist needs what is called narcissistic supply. This is the emotional fuel that keeps the false self running. Admiration, fear, guilt, attention, or even conflict. Any strong reaction from you serves as supply. Even your anger feeds them, because your anger confirms that they matter enough to make you angry. This is why the most powerful shift you can make is not to fight back. It's to become neutral, not cold, not passive. Neutral, observant, present, but emotionally unreadable. Think of it this way. A narcissist is, at their core, performing for an audience. Every manipulation, every projection, every carefully constructed story about who is the victim and who is the villain. It is a performance that requires a reaction to function. When you stop reacting, the performance has no stage. The philosopher Carl Jung would call this process individuation, the work of becoming so rooted in your own psychological reality that the projections of others simply do not stick. You are not defending against the manipulation. You are becoming someone the manipulation cannot locate. In practice, this looks like this. When they attempt to rewrite a shared memory, you do not argue. You simply say, "That's not how I remember it," and move on. When they escalate for a reaction, you do not provide one. You become a mirror, flat, still, reflecting back exactly what they put out, without amplification. When they devalue you, you do not scramble to regain their approval. You recognize it as a defense mechanism, name it internally, and disengage. What happens next is the part most people don't expect. Without supply, without your fear, your guilt, your desperate need to explain yourself, a narcissist begins to destabilize. Their tactics escalate because the tactics that always worked are no longer working. This escalation is not a sign that you are losing. It is the sign that the architecture is beginning to come apart. The hall of mirrors is complete. They are no longer looking at you. They are looking at themselves, and there is nothing more disorienting for someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding that exact gaze. Here is what I want you to take from this. Understanding the narcissist is not about empathy for them, and it's not about revenge either. It's about clarity. It's about seeing the mechanism clearly enough that you stop being caught inside it. The false self is fragile, not because you attacked it, but because it was always fragile. It was built to look solid from the outside. But underneath, there has always been a terrified child who decided long ago that the real self was too dangerous to be seen. That doesn't excuse the damage they cause. It explains the architecture. And when you understand the architecture, you stop needing to fight the building. You simply walk out of it. The most powerful thing you can do is not to become harder, or colder, or more strategic. It is to become more yourself, so fully and so clearly that their projections have nothing to attach to. That is the hall of mirrors. And that is where their influence ends. If this video shifted something for you, I'd love to know which part. Drop it in the comments. Seriously, I read everyone. And if you know someone who's caught inside this kind of dynamic right now, share this with them. Sometimes understanding the pattern is the first step to breaking it. There's more on the hidden architecture of the mind coming on this channel. Subscribe if you want to keep thinking differently. I'll see you in the next one.